Run them Julz fast, run them Julz fast, run them, fuck the slow mo.
Hey. Let's see. All right. We are here on the air live. Yeah, we're live. We're back. We're on the Julz seasons. Hoop and Harm. We're back this season. I took half the season off. Mostly I took half the season off because, busy schedules with graduate school. As I've mentioned with earlier podcasts, installs from things like Hey Lady, You Call Dr. Jones and other things. But now Barry and I are on the same coast, so we can schedule these a lot easier and come back with some flaming hot takes on the NBA and all things basketball. So, first, Barry, I'll let you reacquaint yourself with the listeners.
Let's do it. It's a lot easier coordinating with you when we're not 3 hours apart.
Yeah.
3 hours makes a pretty big difference. I'm just, just out here in San Diego, just sitting here watching the last 30 seconds of this game that I didn't feel like watching because I didn't think the game was going to happen. And I'm just kind of curious what actually ended up happening. And it looks like they tried to make a game. Ricky Rubio just running around like he doesn't have a head anymore and is just kind of dribbling things everywhere.
Yeah, he was.
That was kind of funny to watch.
He was like 8 for 8 going into like the final minute of the fourth from the line, 8 for 8, and so he was the one who was taking the ball to be fouled, but he choked. Oh, I don't know how far you've gotten, but he chokes at the line like a couple times, and that's part of the reason why they let us back in it. I should mention that we're talking about the Celtics just played the Minnesota Timberwolves in Minneapolis, and they came out pretty flat to begin with and sort of throughout. Isaiah Thomas had a brutal day. He couldn't get anything going. He went 0 for 8 before he finally scored a bucket, and the Timberwolves ended up beating the Celtics, but the Celtics made it very interesting down the stretch, especially within the last minute. That's what Barry's checking out now. But not a great loss. Not a great
Tucker's
loss.
not happy with that loss.
Yeah, Tucker's pretty pissed too. I can see.
Yeah, Tucker wasn't happy. He's barking like crazy.
I saw Tucker, by the way. I saw Tucker before I saw you in California.
I heard that.
Yeah, which we'll rectify that pretty soon. But just thought that was funny, a little tidbit. Anyway, so not the best of losses for the Celtics. I was watching Chris Mannix on the CSN after show for half a minute, and he's like, he said as much that it was a bad loss, that it's kind of up there with the Lakers loss and the Nets loss. I think we've lost to Philly at least once too. So I don't know why those things were happening, but that's a talented team. And when you come off a back-to-back, off a week on the beach, being that we're back from All-Star break and most of our guys were on the sand, they just need to go home and piece it back together. And I'm not too worried about them. But as of now, I think we still hold the 3 seed. So that's something.
So here's where I want to start. I want to look at the standings. I was thinking about today. Are we in line for the Heat right now? Nope. The Hawks. Okay, I figured it was one of the two.
Yeah.
So if it ended right now, we would look at the Hawks in the playoffs.
Right.
Which I think, if we want to start there, I have a point to make just when we get there. Hawks would be a good matchup for us in the first round as I'm looking at the teams here. Obviously, the Hornets would be fine too. But who I don't want to play is a team like the Heat or the Pacers. Raptors to an extent, Bulls to an extent as well, and then, kind of poo-poo platter as you go down, further down. But I think the big thing that ails this team, and maybe something we can talk about as kind of a larger thing with what didn't happen last week, what ails this team is Isaiah's great. He can score, but when Isaiah doesn't have it, it's not that there is no one else that can pick it up because other people can. It's almost like you're already kind of playing with fire with Isaiah Thomas as your go-to guy to score and do all this stuff because he relies a lot on A, shooting the 3, B, getting to the line. And sometimes when his three isn't falling, he really forces, going into the lane, which is fine. Guys do that. But being 5'10", you're going to get contact anyways. Yeah. And when you're really starting to force it and you're dropping these teardrops from, just outside the paint and just hoping that someone hits you, that's what seems to happen a lot of times with this team. Because Isaiah is a great scorer. We don't have a great ball in hand point guard, I guess I don't know how else to describe that, right? If you have Evan Turner with the ball, Evan Turner's can be the Evan Turner experience, right? He can make this incredible double turn like he made last night. He made some double turn back, a little fadeaway shot that just hit nothing but the bottom of the net.
Yeah,
and then Evan Turner,
crazy.
Yeah, did like the little fake over his right, then went back over his left, like this incredible shot. And then before you can breathe and say, "Great shot, Evan," he comes down the court with like one hand, this crazy little dipsy-do with his right hand, just throws it up 15 feet off the glass, and it bounces right into it's like, that's the Evan Turner experience, but that's also the point guard experience that we're dealing with right now, right?
Yeah.
So my main point is, maybe this team is built well, right? They have a good, solid foundation of a team, and it made no sense. It made no sense on Thursday to do something drastic, and by drastic I mean really shaking up what this team is about. But in order to compete going further, in order to kind of be obviously with the Cavs, maybe even with the Raptors, and then you think about the Heat. I think a lot of people are high on the Heat. They think the Heat are more legitimate contenders than the Celtics. I've heard that a couple times. It's that you have this notion of someone who I'm missing. Well, I just saw Avery knock down a three, but anyways, you have this notion of like when everyone else is off, you just give this guy the ball and he just goes and does it. But it feels like when Isaiah's off, the rest of the team's off, and that's just because they need him to score. That's not necessarily because the team feeds off him. It's because they need his 20 points a night.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you're playing with fire, right? Like I said before, you're playing with fire already expecting and needing Isaiah to score 25 a night. As great of a player he is, he shouldn't be your 25 a night need to score kind of guy.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. I think the team gets off to a good start, and they not so much, like you said, feed off his energy, but they're very conscious about, shit, we got to score. If Isaiah's not scoring, they're like, Christ, like we all really need to, and it becomes something like in the front of their mind, and they do pretty well for the most part, rising to that challenge. But like Jay Crowder tonight, had a career high 27, which is good. Right. But when Isaiah needs to spearhead the whole process and carry the torch, and on a championship team, he's your sixth man spark plug, a really great one, all-star quality. But we're still missing that piece, and I'm like you. I'm glad that, and we could talk about the trade deadline a little bit if we want, but I'm pretty okay with the decisions not to make any crazy big moves for anybody at the deadline when they weren't really home runs. I'd rather keep that Nets pick, maybe not to draft it, but to at least bring it all the way up until the draft and see what you can get in June rather than what you can get right now. I thought that they would have tried for Al Horford a little bit more than the press kind of said that they did, just because I thought that Al Horford was a safe bet to extend if you took a rental on him. Not that is what they were thinking or not, but I thought that would be what they were thinking. Like, Al Horford, a very reasonable guy, good locker room guy. If you got him here, you could probably convince him. I thought he was a prime candidate for something like that. So when they didn't go get him, I thought it was fine. I thought they could have sent, like, I heard Simmons say, like, you could send Olynyk, James Young, and like 2 picks or something for Al Horford, and I would have been okay with that. But I'm also okay with waiting and see if you can just jump into sweepstakes for him during the summer, because I don't think it's not going to be as difficult to get Al Horford as it would to say get Kevin Durant. But so I was okay with them kind of standing pat at the trade deadline, and I like the front office's mentality about it. Like, we're not a championship team yet. We understand that, and whatever happens this year is like kind of great and all kind of gravy. moving into the moves we have to make going forward. So there's no real true reason to try to grasp at gunning to make the Eastern Conference Finals or gunning to make the finals, because also the worst kept secret around the league is everybody's kind of posturing to back off and let the Warriors just run train on everybody.
Yeah.
So
I have slightly, I don't know, I wouldn't call it the hottest take I've ever had, but I think that it would have taken, so think about Horford, right? I think, there's no question about it. If any, I think we could say this with any, save probably 10 people in the league. Danny, if he wants to, has the assets to probably go get whoever he wants, right? If he wants to give someone 8 first-round picks and 7 second-round picks, like we have it.
Mhm.
That's not, we're not dealing from a position of weakness in terms of assets. What I think Danny dealt with is probably a little bit of that lack of uncertainty, right? You don't want to give up, whatever the deal is, you don't want to give up too much for Horford, who at least in theory could bounce at the end of the year. And then you're kind of left with nothing. And what would you have to show for it? Probably a run at, the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think you're going to beat the Spurs or the Warriors even with Al Horford. I think you can give Cleveland a run for his money. I think you could probably make a case that you'd have a chance at the finals, right? Chance to make the finals, not winning it, right? So, I mean, that would be nice, right? To give this team a deep run. That'd be nice. Yeah. I think they can do that anyways, right? I think they have the team that can make a deep run, whether that's Eastern Conference Finals, whether that's, by some little bit of luck, a little bit of magic, they can make the finals. I still think they have a team, considering what the East looks like. I still think they have a team that could, is good enough to at least definitely get to the Eastern Conference Finals, if not whatever. My main point here is I think that Danny hesitated on including someone like Jared Sullinger or someone a little more valuable, someone like Marcus Smart. Someone a little more valuable to definitely improve the team. Horford versus Sullinger, obviously Horford's a better player, right? But I don't think it was worth Danny to break up how well this team's playing together. You heard some of the pleas from, Evan Turner's and the Isaiahs of the world to keep the team together, right? So I think if Danny heeded to those and really kept that and sort of like said, I do want to keep what's going well for this team together. What can I get without breaking that up? Then you have to deal with, is Al Horford even worth 3 draft picks to begin with? Like, you know what I mean? Is Al Horford worth 3rd overall pick and then a couple? Is that even worth it to begin with? When A, for 5 months, and B, would you rather have Ben Simmons or Al Horford if you get best case scenario on both scenarios, right? So I think it was more him faced with, he doesn't really feel like, Sullinger and the Nets pick and probably one other pick probably gets it done for Horford. Or if Marcus Smart and the Nets pick and another pick probably gets it done for Horford. But is that worth it to break up the core of the team that's been playing so well together and still is going to make noise in the playoffs regardless of how long it takes? And like you said, it's almost like, what's the point to try to load up for a run this year when, if not Golden State, it's San Antonio. If not San Antonio, it's a charged OKC team. So you have these 3 beasts out of the West that are, one of them's going to win a championship. I would bet my life. I don't see the Cavs. I just don't think the Cavs can compete with any 3 of them this year. I don't see it. Yeah. I've watched a lot of Golden State games because they're on a ton out here, if you haven't noticed yet.
I don't hate that.
They're on a whole lot out here, yeah. So I watch a lot of their games. I mean, it's unfair some nights. It's like there's no other word for it but unfair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think it's a good point. I think keeping the core together too, like you mentioned, keeping the team together, you might as well. Like there's no need. If there's nothing that's begging to be, done deal-wise on the horizon, just keep that team together and, build the culture more and more and more going into the playoffs and going into the next season, and maybe like build good faith too a little bit. This is probably a very minor, inconsequential point, but maybe like build good faith with other players around the league too, that Danny doesn't just break those guys up just to try to get better at any cost, even at the cost of real excellent synergy and chemistry in the current team. So and there's nothing out there, as you could see during the deadline. Nothing happened. The best thing that happened was like Tobias Harris and Markieff Morris, and that's nothing that we're going to get too excited about. Markieff Morris is a pretty skilled player, but he's a head case and a problem. So there's nobody out there that would have been too.
On that point, I actually thought, I don't think it was Simmons, but it was someone on his podcast had a great point, and it was in regards to this trade deadline. If Houston had pulled the trigger on a Dwight Howard move, right? So if Houston pulls the trigger and trades Dwight Howard to name your team, Atlanta, whoever was talking about it, the take was that would have set off this chain reaction, this dynamo of probably bigger moves, because if Houston's going to trade this and it's almost like they're giving up, it's almost like, okay, some other teams are going to, might as well try this too. Maybe we'll get overshadowed by Houston giving up and kind of get that kind of press off our back. With if you traded Horford, it's still going to be over the Rockets trading Howard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I thought that was an interesting take, is that one big move never happened to let the other moves happen, and a lot of people think that one big move was see what the Rockets were going to do with Howard. So I thought that was an interesting perspective, because you did hear all these names, and it does feel like lately, the last couple of years, we have heard tons of names around the trade deadline. Nothing really happened. So maybe this is just the new NBA where people are smart and aren't willing to mortgage their future for a player at the trade deadline, because it's really hard to get that, get meshed and it's easier for a role player to come in and find a role, be a 6-7 guy and be an important player for a team, versus it's a lot harder for a guy to come in and without any training camp, without any of that, to just come in and be the number one option for a team, learning probably a new defensive system, learning a new offensive system. It's hard. Same reason you don't see a ton of big in-season moves in football, because it's hard for a guy to come in and learn a whole new coaching staff, learn a whole new system, learn all that. Yeah. Baseball is easier to plug and play, right? You're a pitcher. You come out every 5 days. You throw the same pitches you're going to throw on this team versus the other team. Hitter, same deal, So it's these two sports that are really hard because they're so strategic and they're so X and O. You need to know what you're doing. You can't just come in and immediately make an impact on most teams. So it's a tough thing to do. And to say that we were going to see 6 superstars get traded is probably, looking back on it, it's probably a little silly that we were all everyone got their hopes up over everything. But
yeah. I thought that, and I've, like some of the podcasts that you mentioned, obviously I'm listening to them too, and I'm listening to like Zach Lowe, and he was talking to a few people, and they were talking about whether or not the NBA is getting too smart, or maybe that was Lowe, or maybe it was Simmons. I don't remember which.
But they both touched on it.
Yeah, if the league is getting too smart and they don't value each other's assets as much as once before, and that's my biggest concern about. And I think it should be every Celtics fan's concern about our war chest of assets that other teams around the league are just like, we don't value that stuff as much as you do. And if we wait you out, you're going to have to give them to us. You're going to have to overpay over and over and over.
That's the problem, right?
Yeah. So
this is one of the things where you look at it and you say, sorry, hold on, I'm going back. I'm sure it doesn't bug it up. This is one of those things where we're in an enviable position a year ago today, right? Because we have these 3 future picks, and the Celtics trajectory isn't looking like, a year ago today, the Celtics trajectory isn't probably looking as good as it's looking. So their first round pick is probably looking a little bit better than it's looking right now. Mavericks, same thing. No one really knew what was going to happen with the Mavs. So same thing. Obviously, the Nets are going to be garbage regardless. So a year ago today, you had these 3 picks that conceivably could have all been lottery picks, right? For this year. You look into the next season, you don't know what's going to happen. The Mavs, Celtics, and the Nets. And now you come into the season, obviously the Nets are still trash. Celtics have made this big move, pick being in the 20s. Mavs, same deal. So on point A, the Celtics have 3 first-round picks. Great. Probably can find a buyer for those at some point. That'll remain to be seen. But on hand B, you have a weak draft. You have a pick that's going to be probably a top 5, probably a top 3, maybe a top. Obviously, the Nets pick is going to be your supreme chip. But then the other 2 are kind of garbage picks. They're kind of no man's land picks. Yeah. You don't want to get stuck with, if you're a team trying to do something, right? You don't want to get stuck in that, not lottery, but the Hawks were stuck in forever. The Pacers have been stuck in for a couple of years, where you kind of get lucky to get that transcendent talent that's going to take you to the next level. But at the same time, you're too good to tank it and get back into the lottery. So it's almost like if Danny could do it over, I bet he would trade last year for something, just so that way come now when we're in the off season and it's actually time to think about starting to trade these picks, teams are going to force the Celtics' hand and be like, well, you can't pick 8 people, right? Because you have whatever. I think we have 4 second-round picks and 3 first-round picks, right? We can't pick all 7. Are you going to make our own D-League team? Like, are we going to, you know what I mean? Is it going to be all Celtics draft picks? It's like, we can't make them all. We can't make them all. There's nothing we can do about it. So we're getting into a point where we come from a huge position of power and all these assets to like oh shit, we're probably going to sell one of these picks. A, do the old Suns move where like we don't even pick it, we just sell it for $1 million to whoever wants it. And B, that net pick gets devalued until it becomes the top pick, basically.
Yeah. It's before it was like it's such a position of it's still a position of strength, but it's becoming a worry as each day goes onward. And I'm worried that stupid GMs around the league, they don't want to get caught looking stupid, and they don't even want to do business with us. And for good reason, because Danny's pulled off remarkable trades, and between the Nets deal and the Isaiah Thomas deal and the Jay Crowder deal, and like I heard somebody
stealing
say,
Tyler Zeller.
Yeah. Like these are all. It's like one after another, and maybe these GMs are gun shy when they see 617 area code come up on their dialer. Yeah, I don't know. And the Nets are single-handedly Brook Lopez is single-handedly killing that Nets pick for us. I was the only thing that I was really angry about at the deadline was that Brooklyn couldn't figure it out quick enough to get a GM in there by the deadline to actively get either Joe Johnson, Thad, or Brook Lopez out of that city and just get something back for them. And I don't know if Joe Johnson has been bought out, but I know there was talks about him potentially being bought out, which would be good. But that team's won like 15 games. 15 games is too high. And the only good thing about the loss tonight by our team is that we gave Minnesota another win, which puts them at 18 wins ahead of Brooklyn at 15, between the 4 and the 5 on the Tankathon meter. But I don't know. I think I've been watching the Nets thing like a hawk, obviously. But as it goes along, I'm becoming more and more disillusioned. But I'm also thinking it could end up being like the 3, the 3 pick, or God willing, maybe even like the 2 pick, because those guys at the top there, Ingram and Simmons, seem like the real deal. But I was listening to people say today that there's growing concern that Simmons doesn't have the same sort of eye of a tiger that you need from a franchise guy, or that he drifts and takes plays off. So who knows what'll happen? We don't even know if his team's going to make the March Madness tournament at this point. So we might not even see him in March. But there are some guys from 6 up or 7 up that I think could be real solid players, very good players. But that pick right now, I'd be okay with moving it. What do you think about the Jahlil Okafor thing and how the Boston Herald said that was the deal that Danny was alluding to, and that we would have given the 3 for the Nets pick for Jahlil?
I don't believe it.
Yeah, I don't either. I know. Go ahead.
I don't honestly. I didn't read I haven't read the original. I'm just trying to pull it up. Hirschbeck. What's the new Celtics writer in Globe? Is that his name? Is that who wrote it?
On the Globe, it's like Adam Hemmels.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I don't. This is for the third. So I don't completely not believe that Danny called about Jahlil Okafor. I have so little believe for 1 second he's buy low type of scenario, right? This kid does not have a good season, and that is exactly not what Nets with the. They have enough headache trying to build, right? Let alone having to deal with this 18-year-old kid. Honestly, acting like an 18-year-old, right? Driving way too fast on the freeway, doing things, doing things that 18-year-olds are known to do, but shouldn't be doing as your centerpiece for a franchise, right? So I don't believe for a second that he offered a kind of like the Godfather offer type of thing for Jaleel Okafor. Did he call and see what it was? Probably. I believe that. But I'm having trouble thinking that he tried to trade the Nets pick for Okafor. And then the flop side of that is that did Danny offer around the Nets pick, and that's the best thing that came back, right? Did he kind of like throw the Nets picks available through his channels, and Hinkie's the only one that called and said, we'll give you Okafor for it, right? That's what makes me a little bit nervous. You know, did Doc balk it giving Blake for it? Did the Nets guy balk? I don't know who the Nets GM is, but did he balk it giving Horford for it? And like Hinkie called and was like, hey, we'll give you Okafor for the. That's what makes me a little nervous, because that doesn't seem like feel. I think that we are better off with the third pick or better off with the Nets pick and seeing what falls versus Okafor.
Yeah. I just don't think it's likely. I mean, unless Philadelphia is really that bad at doing this whole thing, because that's the only player. I mean, Nerlens Noel's a good player too, but Jaleel's putting up like 17 and like 8 or something, and in his rookie year, and that's really good. And he's only expected to be better. So I don't know why they would just push reset on their draft from last year, unless they're just really committed to always being horrible, or they really think once Embiid comes back in the fold, he's going to push everybody out of the way and eat up all the minutes. Which, I think he's in Africa, like rehabbing his foot still. So I don't.
I would be surprised if Joel Embiid plays more than 200 NBA games. Yeah. Right. That would be a shock to me if he plays that many.
Yeah. I think this is becoming a Greg Monroe thing. But yeah, I don't really believe that was the big one that everybody's alluding to. I know Steve Bulpett, who's covered the league forever, said that it was, but I think it could have been one of them. But I also think that Danny's really smart. And when he goes on these radio shows in Boston and like says, we did this, we did that, I think he's just playing the rest of the league. He's not telling the truth, because he would be silly to go on and like start to air out all the deals that he had in the mix. I think he's just saying to the rest of the league, no, there are people who are willing to do business with us, and just because you didn't doesn't mean other people aren't. And, trying to make it look like we have a position of power, which we might not, which is a scary thought. But I think that was a lie. And I heard a lot of different things being thrown around. Could have been, Gary Tanguay came out with a horrible thing yesterday.
That's so bad. I don't even want to give him the time of day and discuss that, because that was awful.
He wrote a follow-up piece today defending the piece from yesterday and kind of going after Simmons and somebody else in the Pelicans organization or something, but just horrible. I don't even want to mention it because that hurts my heart to think that people got excited about that non-story.
But the headline, theory not so crazy. No, that's literally the worst thing has ever been written.
Yeah.
Awful. Anyways.
I was when I got here to LA, I moved here. First thing, I was getting my baggage on the carousel, and who's standing next to me but Tanguay? I thought I was in like the Twilight Zone. I was like, I just moved away from you. What are you doing here? Like, I came out here to enjoy the Celtics in peace. The best thing the whole organization did was get rid of him once the Paul Pierce era finished. But anyway, too much on Tanger. But
seriously, way too much.
But so I don't think it was like something like that. The one thing that I've always kind of hoped for is trying to get Jimmy Butler away from Chicago.
Interesting.
And I think that it's probably not likely because they have to build around Jimmy Butler now. But if they really wanted to just be like, Fred Hoiberg, he needs a real shot at this, and we just got to reset because Jono is broken, and he probably only has like a couple seasons left or whatever. And Derrick Rose is, he's a mediocre version of himself for the most part. I think Chicago would listen to blowing things up and just kind of shipping people away to see what they could get back on Jimmy Butler in return. And Jimmy Butler would be a great person to get, but I don't know. I think there's going to be a lot of activity in the summer, and the summer has become where it's at for everybody around the league. They don't really bother with February anymore. It seems to be June and July seems to be everybody's jam. So I think that'll continue to be that way and come the summer. So yeah.
So
I don't know.
I'm not giving him any more time of day, but I do love the fact that I'm just kind of skimming through this, like, basically retraction to his made-up story, right? Where he basically says, oh, but I was told it was actually Bradley Beal who we were talking about. But whatever. This is why I was talking about Anthony. Like, I have heard Bradley Beal stuff before, but Washington's Andre, I don't think you sell that low on him. You just kind of, if you're Washington, you retool and just hope next year it gets back to what you guys were doing last year. I can't. I'll close this. It's gonna make me too angry, but that's fine.
Yeah, it was not good. It was. I saw the headline. Yeah.
So going from that take to the other one, how does Bradley Beal even help the Celtics? Like, do we need him?
He doesn't. He has shooting. Oh, you there? Oh, there. Yeah, he has shooting, but he's made of glass. So, I mean, he's been off the court for most of the season. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that is probably he was trying to throw people off the scent of how bad the first take was with the second, but it was still pretty bad.
Sorry, we're done with that. No more Gary Tango talk.
Yeah. So let me think here. What else could we hit? Just other general things around the league. Any team that you're surprised by this season, either being good or being bad? So far, halfway through.
Say that again. Sorry.
Any team that you're surprised by what they're doing, whether they're overachieving or whether they're underachieving, or anybody that stands out that's kind of been, on your radar or has been like really annoying you that they're not doing as well as they should.
I'd say so I'm looking at the Eastern Conference, right? So let's go bottom to top here. Sixers, Nets, Knicks, Magic. Probably those four, you can agree, didn't really have high expectations for, probably pretty bad all year.
Mm-hmm.
Team that sucks. Now, I thought the Bucks, they should be better.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a Jason, I don't know what it is, but, I watched, was it 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, and I thought that was the team that I'd watch them. They played really hard that game. I thought they were tough. They were pretty versatile. I mean, Giannis is fun to watch. I like watching him play. He's weird looking dude, moves really quick all of a sudden, has just insane hops. He's just a fun dude to watch. You had Jabari Parker coming back. You have Michael Carter-Williams, who I don't think is as good as he seemed like he was going to be as a rookie, but I think he's going to be a pretty serviceable player. I thought he was going to be a pretty serviceable player for the rest of his career. You added Greg Monroe, you had OJ Mayo, right? You have a pretty decent starting lineup there, right? Definitely should be better than a 24-win team at this point in the season. So that's definitely one team that I wasn't paying a lot of attention, was surprised, when I really started to kind of dig into the standings to see how poorly they were doing overall. On the flip side, I know the Raptors, they're built well. Damari Carroll's a good addition. I'm surprised how well they're playing. I mean, they're 3 games back from the Cavs. If you close attention, you probably didn't know that. Truth be told, like that's a pretty decent basketball team right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the Raptors. It's like I haven't watched enough of them to really understand. I mean, Kyle Lowry's actually in shape this year, and DeMar Carroll's playing on a contract year. So I think that probably plays a little bit into it. Also, probably continuity of just having the same guys. You know, I think this squad has been together for like 3 solid years now, and there's a lot to be said for that. And I think it's still the East, and there's still like you can claim a lot of real estate in the East still. I mean, it's gotten better the entire conference, but it's still the Cavs, and then whoever decides to step up that year. So I think we could be seeing another like Atlanta Hawks thing with the Raptors. I think they could play like this well, and then they could fade next year. I don't see them built to last really that much, which is why I'm not really scared to play them in the going forward in the playoffs if the Celtics have to face them eventually. But the biggest, let me see, I'm just looking through. For the East, I guess we'll go through the East. I think the biggest surprise for me has been I was going to say partly Orlando. I kind of figured that Orlando would be pushing towards the playoffs a little bit more than they are right now, because I think they have a lot of talented good players. But I think they're still too young, and they're kind of scattered. But one of the bigger, I guess, surprises for me has been that New York, before they got rid of Fish and before all this stuff happened, how well they were playing and how well Porzingis was playing, really, namely. And the fact that he was setting the league on fire, he looks like, save for Karl Anthony Towns, looked like the best big man to come out of the draft in probably since Anthony Davis. So ceiling wise, and just what you watch night in and night out. So I've been surprised at the Knicks a little bit and happy, because I think it's more fun when the Knicks are good, even though I hate their people and their team. But that's been surprising. The biggest surprise out west, though, for me has been how just abysmal Houston has been, and how bad James Harden has played at leading that team. And they came out like with a horrible record, got their coach fired over it. And the fact that they are right now like the 8th seed, and a team like Portland, who lost their biggest player arguably in Aldridge, is ahead of them at number 7, is like, it's nuts. And that's not to disparage Portland, because I think that's a dope team, and they're always a fun team, and Dame Lillard is crazy, and CJ McCollum has had a great year. But Houston should be fighting Oklahoma City on the daily for that 3 seed in the West. And the fact that they're not is a big disappointment. But did I lose you? Are you there? No, we might have frozen Barry. If we did, I'm sure he'll find his way back in if he shakes it loose. But as Barry jumps back in, we can talk about what the standings are currently at. So out west, it's currently the Warriors at 1, San Antonio, Oklahoma City, the Clippers, Memphis, Dallas, Portland, and Houston. And then for the East, it's Cleveland, Toronto, with tonight's game, Miami now at 3, Boston at 4, Indiana at 5, Atlanta, Charlotte, and Chicago. Charlotte a little bit surprising as well that they've kind of gotten into the mix here. Let's see. See if we can get Barry back here. Maybe not. But that being said, I'm going to just invite Andrew back in here. That being said, I'm glad that we're in the second half. I think it's going to be a fun playoffs. The first round is going to be kind of boring, but the second and third rounds, I think, will be all-time stuff. If the universe loves basketball fans at all, hopefully we'll get the Western Conference final of San Antonio and Golden State, because if those two don't play each other in the West, that'll be the worst outcome in like 15 years for playoff basketball. It really should be the finals matchup, but we got Barry back, so that's good.
There we go.
Yeah. I just ran through the standings and just kind of reiterated that if we don't get San Antonio, Golden State as the Western Conference final, it's going to set basketball back like 15 years. Not really, but it'll be a big disappointment. Yeah, so I don't know. I think as you were freezing, I was saying that Houston has been a huge disappointment as well. And it's no wonder they couldn't move Dwight Howard, because nobody wants Dwight Howard. He's got a loser's mentality, and I'm very happy that Boston didn't end up with him, because I think we would have eaten him alive the first possession that he bounced the ball in the Garden. So
out west, let's see. I am not necessarily surprised by it, but I love to see, just because I've professed this many times on here, I'd love to see how well Boogie's been playing.
yeah,
Right? You love to see how much that kid is just going to put it together. And still don't quite think I think this is close to his potential. I still think he has room to grow and be better, which is the most
out of control
unreal thing about it.
Most talented big man in the league.
Easily. Yeah, no, easily. I feel like that Kings team should be
Better?
Yeah, I feel like they should be okay, but they are on paper, right? On paper, they have some talent. You got Rondo, you have Rudy Gay, you have DeMarcus Cousins, and honestly, with the sort of that riffraff of the 6 to 11 out west, I would have kind of thought they might have found that 8th spot. I think you were mentioning the Trailblazers, in my opinion, are playing a lot better than I thought they were going to play.
Yeah, for sure. I thought they were going to be like bottom of the barrel, like where Phoenix is.
Mavs and Grizz are probably both. Grizz might be outplaying what I thought a little bit, but probably still right in that 5-6 seed, and then the top 4 are right where we expected them. But yeah, I don't. On paper, like I said, the Kings team looks like they should have talent. They seem like they're good. They just don't fit as a basketball team. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's why they only have 23 wins. But Boogie in general he's a delight.
They're still stuck in that like grit and grind type of mindset for how they play, and we're moving away from that, which is the point I was going to make about Greg Monroe. Even though Greg Monroe ate the Celtics alive, but I think we're moving away from this old school style of basketball, and we're much more into run and gun, pace and space, and small ball, and stretch fours and all this stuff. And I think the Grizz are just kind of holding on to an old formula. That's good, it's serviceable, but I don't think it's going to win you anything in the long run.
I totally, wholly agree with that. The Suns, I guess, are another team that it's kind of surprising how quickly it went in the tank. I guess it's what sort of happens when you hire a not a very seasoned head coach who I hadn't even, Derek Fisher, I guess when he was, I don't know, maybe I just missed this about Hornacek, but when like Derek Fisher was playing rather, you always heard like those little things like, oh, he's going to be a coach. When he gets done playing, whenever he's done playing, he's going to be, you hear about Ty Lue too, right? When Ty Lue was playing, you always heard like, yeah, he may not be like the best basketball player, but when he's done, he's going to find a spot on the bench and, he'll make his way up the ladder really quickly. I don't remember reading or hearing, I guess Hornacek's getting a little out of my time, but a little older. But it wasn't a guy that like just came out of the league and like has like that real fresh touch to the league and like is going to jump right in like a Derek Fisher, like a Jason Kidd who knows the league and knows the currentness of the league and can kind of jump right in. He's kind of a little offset from that. I don't remember reading a ton about that, and it just feels like they kind of rushed into it. They have a really weird roster in general. Tyson Chandler looks terrible. I can't figure them out. I guess I thought they'd be better than 14 and 42, but maybe not necessarily like probably 500 is probably what I would have thought the Suns were going to be. But yeah, that's a train wreck. I don't even know what you do with that roster at this point. That's a train wreck of a team out there.
Yeah, like save for they drafted that Booker kid who's really good. He's like, he's a good shooter, and he's like the youngest kid in the draft too. Something crazy. Like he's all of like 16 years old. But
96.
Yeah, gross. My brother, who is 4 years behind us, is older than that. It's crazy. Gross. But Booker's good, but like he's the only bright spot, it seems. Off the top of my head, I can't think of like Bledsoe, whatever. Brandon Knight, forget it. Like I always think of Brandon Knight, Bledsoe, Tyreek Evans, all in the same sort of triangle of players that are just kind of like, what do you do with that? But Phoenix has not been good, and I agree with you. I think the Kings should be better. I think they should be fighting for that 8th seed, especially with Rondo kind of having a resurgence and almost full-on embracing Sacramento at this point. So that's been interesting to watch a little bit. And but they're just horribly run. That team is so horribly run, and I'm nervous that Boogie will die there. But we'll see. We'll see what happens this summer too. But I don't know how Danny hasn't like pulled the wool over Vlade's eyes yet, or Vivek's eyes, and gotten Boogie out of there. But I don't know.
So I read something. I guess it's a little. I'm trying to find the article. I don't remember where I read it. I feel like there was this rumor that the Kings are going to hire an actual GM this offseason. And I think the tidbit of why, I thought it was Woj, but I don't, probably, right? Yeah. The tidbit why was that Vlade was, Vivek didn't trust Vlade enough because the nuances and like the details of the CBA were just completely over Vlade's head, and he didn't really know how to deal with it. So I personally think that's why the Kings made no moves, because Vivek was just like, Vlade, I trust you, but no, you can't. Don't do anything. Just don't touch anything for like 4 more months until we get like an actual GM in here who can do something. Like, please don't touch my team. Like, just leave it alone.
All I'm envisioning is like Vlade trying to call out on on the phone, like an office phone, and not understanding how to call out. Like he doesn't know how to press 1 first or something. Like that's the situation that's going on there in Sacramento. It's like Vlade Divac not knowing how to press 1 to call Boston, or press 1 to call Washington, or whatever the fuck. So I don't know. I think that's a mess. But maybe something will shake loose as we get closer. I would love to get a high pick, obviously with that Nets pick, and just give it to Sacramento with a promise of more gold to come and get Boogie out of there. But
so I'm reading the line from Woj here. It's the Kings are starting to acknowledge that this. I find this so funny the way it's written. The Kings are starting to acknowledge that Divac has been overwhelmed with the complexities of the collective bargaining agreement and the sophisticated ways in which most NBA teams are run now.
Yeah.
They'd be like, I don't even.
I mean, you and I, if we like crammed for like a week, we'd know how to do it. And he's been at it for a while now.
It's your job.
League. Yeah.
It's too complicated for me. No, thank you.
Yeah. So that's crazy.
It died when I read that. But I thought that was a good reason why the Kings made literally no moves. That's why there's been not even any rumors about Boogie or Rudy Gay or anything. It's just because Vivek has just been completely telling Vlade to not pick up the phone. Like, if people call you, Vlade, don't even pick up. Tell them you're not here. Like, don't worry about it. Put it right to voicemail. Don't even speak to them. I don't want you agreeing to anything without knowing you agreed to it. I don't want anything like that happening.
Like a parent who's leaving their like 10-year-old or 11-year-old home
Exactly.
alone for the first time. Don't answer the phone. Just let the machine
Don't answer
get
the door. Leave the shades shut. Like, just leave everything alone. I'll be back in an hour. Just don't break anything in an hour.
it. Yeah. And that parent being wildly irresponsible themselves
Yeah,
too.
seriously.
So it's
The
the
same
blind.
parent who let the kid drink when he was 8, but
Yeah.
doesn't let him leave him alone.
Right.
Ugh.
So I say these things about Boogie, but in the back of my mind, I know it can't happen because of that damn new stadium that they're building. And the fact that they're building the new stadium means they need the marquee. They need Boogie and whatever else they've got to kind of keep selling it out, or not selling it out, but at least fill it with people to have a star to watch. So I'm nervous that Boogie isn't going anywhere until his contract is up and whenever that is. I should look that up, but anyway, so but a lot of good stuff going on. I think I was saying when we were trying to cue you back in was that the first round might be a little gross for the playoffs, but going forward, I think they should be barn burners because all the talent really seems to be at the top in terms of the playoff races in each conference, but it should be good. I'm looking forward to it. We still have like 20 or so games to play, 25 games. But who knows? I think the Celtics are in a good position. They're at the 4 seed now with tonight's results.
Yeah, they just got swapped. I just saw that.
Yeah, but I'm not too worried. If we're at 3 or 4, that's fine. It's totally okay. To me at least.
I'm going to differ with you there. I'm going to differ with you and say they'd be better off in the 3 seed.
Because you'd rather not play Miami.
I'd rather end up with the Hawks in the first round and the Raptors in the second round versus the Pacers in the first round and the Cavs in the second round. I'd rather that first combo. If it ends right now as it is, I'd rather see the Hawks than the Raptors versus the Pacers than the Cavs.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I think that's a smoother. Yeah, because I feel like we have a fighting chance between against both those teams, Toronto and Atlanta. So, I guess on second thought, I'm with you. But who knows? Who knows how it'll play out and what'll happen this summer? I'm interested in this summer because I think this is when you have to unload all these picks and all these assets. They really need to go after this summer, and we got to start accumulating real like 3s for one guy, like 2s for one guy. It's got to be that because this team is full to bursting with all the personnel. Luckily, we were able to waive David Lee. R.I.P. David Lee. I like that guy a lot, but it's just he's done. He's done for the most part.
Sad.
And I don't know. We'll see. And then we'll probably just be hearing rumors about Kevin Love again come May. But who knows? Especially when the Cavaliers lose again in the finals, because they will. Because they don't have enough. I don't know. I feel like they're not. Their culture sucks, is what I'm trying to say. It's and they're divided in certain spots, and they get rid of Blatt halfway through, not even halfway through the season, which is ridiculous. And they're never going to beat San Antonio. They're never going to beat the Warriors. It's not going to happen. So I will be annoyed to watch LeBron again in the finals, but I'll be totally okay watching him lose. So
totally,
which is almost guaranteed. So you got any parting shots before we take off here?
I don't know. I'm trying to come up with something clever. I have nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're just trying to get our feet out from under us again with this sort of thing. But we'll be back at it again pretty soon and have more of a structure around what we're gonna discuss for the viewers. But today we just wanted to cover a bunch of areas and give a few different topics a little bit of shine. Anyway, so for Barry, my name is Patrick as always, and this was another installment of Run the Julz Hoop and Harm, episode number, I don't know, we might be at like 9 or 10 now. Should go back and check. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll be back soon.
Later.